everyone. In this class we will be solving the IAS Mains 2016 paper 1. Now we will be solving the general studies paper. The paper comprised of 20 questions from history and geography. Now we will work around what kind of questions were there. Now the first question was about the Buddhist stupa art, and the main idea that was asked in this question was that these stupas not only depicted the folk motifs but they also talked about the ideals of Buddha. So what you have to exactly mention here is the architectural design of Buddha's stupa, the importance of the four gates which denote the four basic ideas, that's enlightenment, birth, nirvana of Lord Buddha. Then the stupa also depicted the information of trade between the Gandhara and the Central Asia. So it was again important as this stupas were trying to build trade relations with Central Asia. So you have to mention information like that. Also in the architectural design you have to mention the idea of enlightenment was the main idea, and the four dharma that were propounded under Buddhism were discussed in the stupa designs. Now the next question talks about Krishnadev Rai. Now Krishnadev Rai of Vijayanagar was an important ruler. He patronized many Kannada poets. Some of those are mentioned here and their compositions. He also was a founder of the Amukta Mandalya. He led the formation of various temples. Above all, during his reign, it was considered as a golden age of Telugu literature. There were 8 poets in his court which were known as Ashta Diggajallu, and these 8 poets were considered as 8 elephants who are supporting the world, or who are the 8 points when we talk about the directions. So it's north, south, east, west. So these 8 elephants were considered as the 8 cardinal points and were part of his court. So you have to mention all this. The next was the uprising of 1857 was important in the evolution of British policies in India, because it ended the doctrine of lapse. There was reorganization of army that took place. Spoils were not allowed in the higher military order. Then there were reforms in criminal laws. There were many universities that came into existence. The policy of imperial expansion was abandoned. There were appointment of Indians based on their qualifications. So these were some of the major upheavals that took place after 1857 revolt. Now the role of women in freedom struggle, especially during Gandhian phase, you have Annie Besant's Theosophical Society, Sarojini Naidu, the Nightingale of India, role of Madam Bikaji Kama. Then you had some important works by Kamala Devi Chattopadhyay, who was one of the pioneers in salt satyagraha. Then you have B.B. Hardam Kaur. She was the editor of the Educational Journal Punjabi Behan. Sarla Devi Chaudhrani, she led the foundations of Hindu Sahayak Sabha, and Agyavati, she started the Vidva Ashram. So these were some of the major they were some of the major reformers who led forward their work. Also the importance of social reforms, the spread of education, removal of malpractices related to female infanticide, etc. were controlled and curbed during this time, are important to note here. Also there were some instances or sightings which said women gave their gold ornaments for the national fund for political training and so on. So those are some of the important highlights that you need to mention. Now differences in the approach of Subhash Chandra Bose and Mahatma Gandhi. You have to basically mention the differences between the moderates and the extremists. Next, the formation of linguistic states strengthened the cause of Indian unity. Why or why not? So like you can go either ways. What I am trying to explain here is that regionalism, if it is strengthened, the idea of nationalism erodes away. As a result, you would face administrative obstacles, there would be instability in the political setup, there could be increasing disputes with the neighboring states since there is breaking down of the states into numerous sections. However, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel led to unification of India. Most of the states that were divided originally were based on linguistic parameters, the Tamil speaking people, the Telugu speaking people, the Andhra speaking people, and so on and so forth. Sorry, not the Andhra speaking, the Telugu speaking people. So you have the linguistic states that were divided. However, the recent demands, like for example, say talk about Vidarbha, talk about the recent demands from Uttarakhand or Telangana, they were not based on language per se, but language has been one of the major prior cause of regionalism or division into minor units since independence. Now next is anti-colonial struggle in West Africa was led by the new elite of Western educated Africans. Now this is a very important question because this formed a backdrop of the India's independence movement. Now what is basically talked about in the textbook explains that Africans were not given independence. The basic idea is the textbooks try to sometimes cite that Africans were given independence as a kind of say a mercy plea. However, we can say Africans won their independence, and this revolt came much before the Western education was introduced in Africa. The whole and soul idea was led by some Western educated Africans who returned back to Africa after studying from Western nations, and they had an idea as to what the colonizers think about their political ideologies, and they had a good communication skills, or they were able to interact well or communicate with the colonizers. As a result, they were the people who led the reforms, or I could say the colonial struggles. However, the colonial struggles started much before the Western educated Africans moved in. Some of the examples were the Mende Rebellion in Sierra Leone, the Maji Maji Rebellion in Tanzania. Then you have the insurrection of Gambia in Central Africa, where there was forced labor and forced cotton plantation that used to occur, and all those were revolted by the localites there. So you have a backdrop which finally led to a sect of Western educated Africans who finally derived their independence. And it's not that Africa was given independence, we should say that Africa won their independence. Africans won their independence. The next question is, to what extent globalization has influenced the core of cultural diversity? Now again, this question has both the pros and the cons. On the negative aspect, I can say there is loss of individualism, there is loss of cultural identity, there is more exploitation of the workers, there is social stigmas related to it, societal values are declining, so on and so forth. However, there are some positive aspects of globalization that have influenced the culture. For example, we can say, let's talk about worldly art from Maharashtra. That art was not introduced or was not common to peoples in and around the nation and around the globe. But with the globalization coming in, there is a way for self-representation and global representation. There is exchange of information through social networking, and this also redefines the collective identity. As a result, you have the cultures, the native cultures, which are getting a kind of global representation nowadays. So we can say it has both the pros and the cons, and you should mention both briefly. Now next is, the essential condition to eradicate poverty is to liberate the poor from the process of deprivation. Now this question talks about the social and the financial inclusion. So you must mention the recent schemes like Kaushal Vikas Yojana, the Ujala Yojana, Jan Dhan Yojana, then providing LPG to the BPL families, making India the open defecation free nation, and initiatives like these should be mentioned under this answer, because we are talking about development of the poor and development of the those living in deprived states. So the main idea here is to mention the basics of financial inclusion and social inclusion. The next question talks about the tribals being referred to as scheduled tribes in India and the provisions for their upliftment. Those have been laid down forward by the National Commission of Scheduled Tribes and the recent amendments. We have covered those in our links here. Now next question, smart city program and the quality of urban life. We have discussed this in detail in the previous video lecture. You can refer those that lecture for details. Now this question talks about the basis of regionalism. Now when we talk about basis of regionalism, regionalism has been a kind of force, a kind of dividing force or a force that is eroding the ideas of nationalism from the nation. So when we talk about regionalism per se and the benefits of development and the distribution, I could say you have the northeast state which is deprived, then you have the Bimaru states, the region of the Bimaru states in India. So you have the Bimaru states, the northeast states. So these are kind of regions which are deprived. So a good idea is to depict your answers with the help of maps explaining how there has been regional differences in the development, and those would be further strengthened if there is a kind of breakdown of regions further, or kind of regionalism which is promoted further. The next question, now this is a question from a core graduate level geography. So you are asked about the concept of air mass and its role in microclimate changes. We have covered this lecture in detail, so you can simply refer that. Now those from geography optional definitely had an edge on this questions like these, the questions related to regionalism and air masses. The next question is, Himalayas are highly prone to landslide. So you have to mention the Uttarakhand landslide, the recent landslides, how the Lippu Lake Pass got disrupted and the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra was moved on from, had to be pushed on through the Nathula Pass. Himalayas are basically the young fold mountains in their active phases. So what happens is there are lot of folding and faulting activities that take place. We have covered the lecture where we have talked about the landslides, the impacts, the causes. So you can refer that, as well as you have to mention how the active phase of Himalaya has been a major driving force for active landslides in the Himalayan belt. And causes and measures are there in the lecture, you can refer those. Now next question, the effective management of land and water resources would reduce the human miseries. Now when we talk about land and water management, resources management, the first and the foremost thing would be the idea of interlinking of rivers. So you have the regions in India, the northeast and the eastern regions which are flood prone, and the western dry arid regions. So the interlinking would provide a kind of balance of water supply. Projects like Soni Yojana, which would be providing water to the arid areas of Kathiawar, we have covered those in the lecture. Then you have schemes like drip irrigation for arid areas. So you have to utilize with the minimum water, you can get the maximum benefits. You can cite down the case study as in Israel. Then you have the ideas of rainwater harvesting, where you have the housetop roofs which are accumulating the rainwater, and those rainwater gets stored in the tanks and that can be later on used. As far as management of land resources comes in, common property resources, the CPR management is an important aspect that we need to understand. So all these would definitely reduce the miseries because it would lead to more employment generation. The arid areas would have more water supplies, there would be potentials for more water development. However, the water which are flood prone would have a kind of water level that is balanced by the diversion of waters. Now next question talks about the South China Sea dispute. We have covered these extensively in our analysis and the current affairs. You can refer those. The next question is an important question. This question came in view of the Chennai floods recently. Major Indian cities are becoming vulnerable to floods. Now this video talks about floods. there was a recent video that I took 2 days back which talked about global warming and greenhouse effect. So you have to also mention that, where you need to explain how the effect of due to the effect of global warming there is increase in the rise in the sea level. As a result of rise in the sea level, the coastal areas are prone or susceptible to more erosion and more vulnerable to floods in the region. So you have to mention those. Along with that, you should also refer the video on the floods and droughts, where we have talked about the major causes and the mitigation actions. So refer these 2 videos, and you must mention whatever questions are there, try to jot down with recent examples like Chennai floods here. When there was a question on landslides, you should have mentioned the Uttarakhand landslides. Now the question talks about Indus Water Treaty. Now this was an important question and an expected question. The Indus Water Treaty and the Look East policy, those 2 were recently in news. We have covered those extensively. So you can refer simply these links to understand that. Now, problems and prospects of inland water transport in India is very important. This is important in lieu of the recent national waterway projects that have taken place. So you have the various national waterways, of which National Waterway 1, that's from Ganga to Haldia, is important. You have numerous prospects that you can definitely jot down, saying that it would provide a means of transportation. In India, water sector contributes to a very less transportation. With the advent of the inland water transportation in India, there would be more ease in the transportation facilities that would develop. However, there are numerous problems associated with it. The problems related to siltation. The siltation would not provide easy flow or easy water transportation. Problems related to salinity. Then there is diversion of lot of water for irrigation purposes, that also affects the inland water transport. And finally, the seasonal fall in the water level. So there is a kind of variation that goes on and on in the water level, and that also affects the inland water transportation. Next question. Now this question we have covered in detail in our video lecture. So the idea of micro watershed development projects help in conservation of drought prone and semi-arid areas. You can very well jot down the efforts of Rajendra Singh in Alwar and Anna Hazare in Raelgain. So you have Kothapalli in Andhra Pradesh and Sukhumajri in Haryana, which are other 2 examples that you can mention. So we have covered that in detail in our lecture on watershed management and watershed development, specifically focusing on the micro projects. So these were the major questions. So with this we cover the IAS GS Mains 2016 paper 1. We'll be covering definitely the optional paper in the coming classes and more classes which are related to UPSC. In our forthcoming lectures we'll also cover the NCERT series. We'll start with a new series, that's the NCERT series, where we'll be covering topic wise NCERT from class 6th onwards. You can definitely subscribe to our channel to have more updates on that. Have a good day ahead.